Thanks for joining me for my absolutely favorite thing to talk about, which is sports nutrition. Whether you're physically active or would like to be, a weekend warrior, a world-class athlete, or even a world-class grandchild, or if you've got world-class kids or grandkids, this is information that I think is paramount for all of us to understand. One of the things that I think is so extraordinary about this topic is there's a lot there, but we can simplify it and get it down to something that's doable for each and every one of us on a day-in, day-out basis. But there are several things we need to understand. What is a good nutritional foundation for sports nutrition? What is the role of protein, carbohydrates, fluids? How can we recover fast, efficiently, and pain-free, and avoid as many injuries as possible, by the way? And then put all that together in such a way that we can just make it happen in a very easy, convenient way. Well, let me give you a little credibility before we start for Shaklee Corporation and the products they have developed in this particular arena. It turns out that Shaklee Fuel has been the nutritional basis for the first American ascent of Mount Everest without oxygen, the first nonstop flight around the world, 3 solo polar explorations by Will Steger. It tripled the existing human-powered flight record. The astronauts have been using what we call performance today since 1993, and with the work that we've done with Olympians, there's 120 medals, 60 of those gold, with Shaklee-powered athletes. That's a pretty extraordinary legacy when you think about it, because these are people who are out pushing the human performance envelope, trying to do the best they possibly can do, and they end up on our front porch because they know these products work. Since 1993, we've worked with the astronauts for the rehydration drink, and just a little aside, I helped design that jet propelled backpack that they're flying around in space with. And here's Commander Mark Kelly on his last and the final space shuttle mission with a Shaklee Vitalizer floating right next to him. He wouldn't go anywhere without this stuff. So as I say, people use this in every extreme situation you can imagine, and if anybody actually tells you that Shaklee's out of this world, well, here's proof right there. But here's what I want you to think about. I got excited about this when we were introduced to Shaklee because I've used Shaklee started using Shaklee after I was already very physically active. I've climbed all 54 of the 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado in the summer and in the winter, and most of those winter climbs were solo because I couldn't find anybody crazy enough to do it with me. Probably 3/4 of those were climbed before I knew about Shaklee. And the quarter that were climbed afterward, there was a dramatic difference in how I felt, how easy it was, how I recovered. It's pretty extraordinary what a difference it makes. I've climbed the Matterhorn in Switzerland a couple of times. I've done 3 first ascents in the Coast Range of British Columbia, peaks that had never been climbed before. I've ridden 79 century rides. Those are 100-mile bike rides, and I don't ride what I call recreational centuries. I don't stop at the aid stations and go for rest stops. I just get on the bike, and 100 miles later I get off. I've ridden 8 double centuries. I've ridden the Courage Classic 19 times and the Triple Bypass, which is considered probably the most difficult one-day bike race in this country. But I think my biggest claim to fame is here we are with 4 kids, 9 grandkids, 3 great-granddaughters, and we run rings around most people our age. In fact, most of the grandparents I know, when the weekend's over, the grandkids go home, they collapse in the easy chair and go, oh, thank God that's over with. But in our family, a lot of the grandkids are going, oh, thank God that's over with. Not the ones that are using Shaklee, but the ones that don't. Certainly, that's the issue. But let's talk about what's a good basic nutritional foundation and why should we even care. There was a study done with a women's collegiate basketball team living in an athletic dorm with a full-time dietitian with 3 well-prepared meals every day. All they had to do was walk in, sit down, and consume those meals. Now, how many of us have access to regularly designed meals by dietitians that we can just sit down and eat? And yet, if you look at the red line, that's where they averaged less than the RDA for those major nutrients. In fact, when Shaklee was working with the women's Olympic ski team, the average woman on the team consumed over 5,000 calories a day. That's more than 3 times what the average woman in this country eats if they're not an athlete. And yet on 5,000 calories a day, they were still deficient in calcium and iron. So let me give you a clue. If you can't get it on 5,000 calories a day, you cannot get it out of your food anymore. So we need to pay attention. And there are many nutrients out there that are crucial to our performance, especially those of you who are serious about fitness and serious about physical performance. And when you look at all of these nutrients, these are all required, they're all necessary, and you'll notice that a lot of the places where we get those nutrients are not, unfortunately, that common in the American diet as often as they should be. Well, the net result of that is that we know there are certain things that we need to do, especially as athletes, that we can add that will make a difference in our performance. But I want to emphasize one thing. What we're talking about is a good basis for sports nutrition is just good nutrition. Whether you're physically active or not, this will make a huge difference in how you feel, the kind of energy you have. Those are the kinds of things that all of us should be thinking about. Well, we need a good protein source. We need a good multivitamin mineral supplement to fill in the blanks that we know we have from that previous slide. Most of us will need extra B complex because it's involved in what's called the Krebs cycle. And even if you're consuming enough carbohydrates to create the energy, if you don't have enough B complex, instead of converting it to energy, it converts it to fat. For circulation and cardiovascular function, we need extra vitamin E, vitamin C to strengthen our immune system, because when we are very physically active, it constantly is beating up on our immune system. We need more during those periods. For people that deal with improper muscle contraction and relaxation, they get charley horses, they get cramps, osteomatrix, vital mag, calcium and magnesium. Those are the things that are required. And for men especially, zinc is something you need to pay attention to. It doesn't have anything specifically to do with athletic performance, but the more you sweat, the more you lose, and it turns out that men with prostate problems typically have a zinc deficiency. So those are things we need to be thinking about. Those are things we typically will need to add to our diet, given the kinds of diets most of us eat day in and day out, to make sure that we can perform our best. And Shaklee has more clinical research as it relates to nutrition than probably the sum total of almost every other company in our industry. These products have been proven by world-class athletes. They are complete, they are bioavailable. And when you look at this list, you might be tempted to say, well, maybe I'll just run down to Costco and buy the cheapest thing I can find, or maybe I'll run into Whole Foods and buy what I can find there. But let me give you an example of why you may not want to do that. Because you see, the top-selling multivitamin, the most tested and doctor-recommended vitamin in this country is Centrum. This is typical of about 90% of what is sold in this country. They can change the name, change the label, change the color of the tablets, but it's all pretty much the same. And these are the ingredients found in Centrum. I highlighted in red a few that you may think are rather curious, and let me point out some of those to you. Things like calcium stearate that is found in lubricants, surfactants, and soap scum, cupric sulfate used as an herbicide, fungicide, pesticide. You go right down the list, and you find all kinds of interesting things like antifreeze and synthetic resins and paper making and plastic. And the point is this: every single one of the things on that list can be toxic and or carcinogenic. And you've got to ask yourself, why would you put that in a vitamin? And the answer is because it makes a cheap, easy tablet that looks pretty and holds its shape. And unfortunately, that will describe the vast majority of what you can find in the marketplace, whether you buy it at Costco or Whole Foods. Now let's contrast that to Shaklee. 10 years ago, Shaklee engaged in what's called the landmark study. UC Berkeley School of Public Health for 20 years has been studying the health status of Americans who take a multivitamin and those who don't. And our owner went to them and said, would you consider taking a group of Shaklee people who have taken Shaklee supplements for 20 years or more and comparing the two groups? And I want to show you the difference between these because it's nothing short of extraordinary. Now let's start with this. The average age of the people taking no supplements was 53. The average age of people taking other brands of supplements besides Shaklee was 58, and the average age of the Shaklee group was 63. So we were 5 years older than this group, 10 years older than this group, and everything else being equal, you would have expected us to have many more health problems just because we're significantly older. And yet, when you look at this, what I want you to realize is the numbers are dramatic. Diabetes, 2.9% of the Shaklee population versus 11.1 and 8.5. That's almost 4 times higher and 3 times higher. Heart attacks, 2.5% of the Shaklee population versus 7.6 and 4.4. That's 3 times higher and almost double. we're not talking 5 or 10 or 15% differences. We're talking 2 and 3 and 400% differences. And it's the same thing right down the line. Congestive heart failure, stroke, coronary heart disease, emphysema. The Shaklee group is dramatically healthier than the other two groups. But I want you to notice what is highlighted in yellow. It turns out that for diabetes, heart attacks, stroke, and coronary heart disease, people taking nothing have better health than the people taking other brands of multivitamins besides Shaklee. You are better off doing nothing than you are taking most of the junk that's available out there in the marketplace today. There is a huge difference, and a few bucks saved on a vitamin may cost you your health. But this is a terrific basis for a good nutritional foundation, whether you're an athlete or not. And the net result of that study was that Shaklee looked at the Shaklee people and said, what are these people taking that made them so healthy? And they put it all together in what we call Shaklee Vitalizer. It's a simple peel-off strip, 6 different tablets in it. It has 80 bio-optimized nutrients that are clinically proven, independently proven, to create a foundation for a longer, healthier life, as you saw from the landmark study. We are the only company in our industry that has independent clinical proof that our products actually work. Now, there's another area we need to focus on. Who needs extra protein in their diet? Well, anybody beginning a new exercise program or increasing the intensity of workouts, calorie-restricted athletes, that could be dancers, it could be wrestlers, endurance athletes, those engaged in heavy physical training, weightlifters and bodybuilders, and oh, by the way, if you're over 40, regardless of whether you're working out, you need extra protein because we continue to lose lean muscle mass in significant amounts from that point in time forward. So knowing that, how much do we need? Well, if you take an active athletic male, the formula looks like this. Body weight times 0.8 is how many grams of protein. Take a 200-pound male, that's 160 grams a day. Well, where are you going to get it? Well, look at that. Half a cup of red beans is 22 grams. My gosh, that would be what? 4 cups a day? That's dry. And after you cook them, holy cow. Quarter-pound hamburger, 20 grams. You need 8 quarter-pounders a day. A chicken thigh is 15 grams. That's 10, 11 chicken thighs a day. It is difficult to get the amount of protein in your diet that you require when you're physically active. But you have some other options. Shaklee for many years has had what we call energizing soy protein, and in one serving of this, you can get 14 grams of protein and only 110 calories and 1 gram of fat, and none of that is cholesterol. Compare that to a quarter-pound burger with 244 calories, 17 grams of fat, and 77 milligrams of cholesterol. Or you can do one of our 180 smoothies. That's got a higher incidence of protein at 16 grams, 170 calories, 3 grams of fat, no cholesterol. That's a terrific part of any good nutritional foundation, regardless of how active you are. But one of the areas that I think is so interesting is when you combine these products with physical activity, what can happen? Fascinating study done by Dr. Wayne Westcott, PhD, was a 6-month study to examine the effects of moderate exercise using the 180 smoothies. This was 68 sedentary middle-aged adults, which is a very polite way of saying couch potatoes. They had one of the half servings of 180 post-exercise compared to the people who were doing just the exercise without the 180. And here's what I want you to notice. Dramatically more weight loss in the 180 group, more lean muscle mass build in the 180 group, and more body fat lost in the 180 group. And when you look at that compared to just the people who did the exercise without using the 180, having better weight loss, increased lean muscle, and increased fat loss, it occurs to me that's a whole lot better way to exercise. But let's take it one step further. This one was a 9-month study in older adults. They exercised 2 to 3 days a week. They were split up into 3 different groups, the placebo group, an exercise-only group, and an exercise plus Shaklee nutrition, which included smoothies and Vitalizer. And look at this. These are dramatic results. The resting diastolic blood pressure. In the control group, nothing much changed pre and post. In the exercise group, it actually went up a little bit, pre and post. But when they added nutrition, pre and post was a dramatic difference, a significant drop in diastolic blood pressure. But maybe even more significant is this one, especially for those of us who are getting older, because they looked at the actual bone density, and it turns out what you would expect in the control group who did nothing different. They actually lost bone density during that period of time, which is typical as we age. In the exercise-only group, they lost a smidge, but it wasn't enough to be statistically significant. But in the exercise plus nutrition, meaning exercise plus the 180 smoothies and the vitalizer, they actually increased bone density in just that 9-month period in older adults. Most people believe you cannot recover bone density, and yet this shows a dramatic change. That's pretty exciting stuff, because what you discover is these findings indicate that strength training, aerobic exercise, and nutritional supplements may be more effective than just exercise for increasing lean weight and for reducing resting blood pressure, as well as increasing bone density. That's pretty extraordinary when you think about it. So what really is the difference between Shaklee and the products that are out there that people are trying to use to maintain their health and especially for better athletic performance? Well, I want you to think about this. Just last month, the New York Attorney General sued GNC, Target, Walmart, and Walgreens because 80% of the herbal products tested had none of the active ingredients that were listed on their label. People walk in there thinking they're buying something that's good for them, and it's not even in the bottle. Most other companies have little to no quality control, where Shaklee does 100,000 tests per year, over 278 just on the raw materials, to make sure that there are no contaminants. Consumer reports show that EAS Mileplex Original Dark Chocolate Shake and 2 versions of Muscle Milk chocolate drinks had high levels of arsenic, cadmium, and lead. Those are the kinds of things that Shaklee tests for to make sure they're not in even the raw materials. That would never happen with a Shaklee product. GNC sells a product called C4 Extreme for athletes. It contains DMMA. It's a decongestant that can cause heart failure. It's been banned by the FDA, and yet GNC continues to sell it. Of 58 brands of protein drinks, 25% had steroid contamination and 11% for other banned substances. That would never happen with a Shaklee product. Olympian Jessica Hardy was banned from the Olympics because of clenbuterol contamination in Advocare Arginine Extreme. In other words, she tested positive for a banned substance that was in a product that is supposedly natural and safe. Of the top 10 brands of omega-3s, they all contain PCBs and or mercury, and things like carcinogenic fungicides that are found in ginseng. We went 2 years without selling one of our most popular products, Core Energy, that contains ginseng, and yet every single crop that Shaklee rejected was bought by other manufacturers and sold to you, the American public. Yes, there is a real difference, and you've got to ask yourself, who will you trust? Well, let's carry this one step further. That was the basis for good, sound nutrition, whether you're an athlete or not, but especially if you're an athlete. But now let's look at some things very specifically that are important. First of all, endurance. And that's for anything over 45 minutes with a significant output. You have to accomplish 2 things at the same time. You need to replace fluids at the same rate you lose them, and you need to replace glycogen at the same rate you expend it. That's what you burn for energy. So let's start with the fluid piece. It turns out that the fluids are your cooling system. And if you get dehydrated, if you lose 2% of your body weight in fluids, you'll experience discomfort and weakness. At 4%, it's poor concentration, increased heart rate. At 6%, disorientation. At 8%, you will collapse. Well, let's look at what most people do. I can't even tell you how many coaches say, oh, I only give my athletes water. Well, guess what? After a 2-hour performance, and the hotter it is and the harder you're working, the faster that's going to drop, you will get dehydrated because it turns out that your thirst mechanism is very inefficient. If you only drink until you're no longer thirsty with just water, you'll only replace about 50% of the water you have lost. So even though you're not thirsty, you can still get dehydrated. The hotter it is and the harder you're working, the faster that happens. Well, they add electrolytes to intelligently designed sport drinks. Ours was designed for the Daedalus Project, which tripled the human-powered flight record. That's where the original research came from. And the reason you add electrolytes is because it keeps you thirsty longer, so you will continue to drink until you replace the fluids that you have actually lost. Performance is designed in such a way that when you mix it the proper way and you drink it the way you're supposed to, you can maintain your hydration level very accurately over a very long period of time. But the other piece that's related to that is you also have to replace the glycogen, your muscle fuel, because that's what's required for continual energy output and stamina. That's the simple forms of the carbos that your body has to burn. And the interesting thing is, you can only store a total of 99 minutes of glycogen before it has to be replaced, or you will see significant changes in your performance. You've got 3 minutes worth in your blood glucose, you've got 6 minutes worth in liver glycogen, and stored in your muscles, you can have as much as 90 if you've got a good diet. Most Americans do not. But let's look at how many carbohydrates you need. Well, the formula here is take body weight times 15, and that's how many calories a day of carbos. A 200-pound male, that's 3,000 calories a day. That's 30 servings a day. A servings of carbohydrate is considered 100 calories. Well, where are you going to get that? Well, half a cup of cereal, rice, pasta, or fruit is 1 serving. That means you've got to have 30 cups of cereal, rice, pasta, or fruit. 1 cup of juice or vegetable is a serving, so you've got to have 30 cups. 1 slice of bread, that's a loaf of bread a day in order to get it. Or alternatively, you can use Shaklee Performance, because it turns out that the way Shaklee Performance is designed, it allows you not only to maintain, but you can actually increase blood glucose levels over the time of performance. If you use just water, obviously you're not replacing the glycogen stores, but this is what set the human-powered flight record. It has 67% more muscle fuel than Gatorade, and the interesting thing about Gatorade is they put a ton of electrolytes in there to keep you thirsty longer than you should. You can actually overhydrate with Gatorade. You can get too much fluid in your system, but not enough glycogen in order to maintain your performance, and it literally just logs you down. Performance is the best designed, most extraordinary product on the market, and one of the things that I found when I was riding Century rides is I used to, before Shaklee, bonk at about 80 miles. In other words, at that point, your body just kind of shuts down. You haven't got any glycogen stores. You haven't got any energy to burn. It has to convert to now taking protein and fat and changing that into fuel, and literally it's like hitting the wall. And after I started using Performance, I never bonked at 80 miles. I could ride the last 20 miles at the same pace I rode the first 20 miles. It made an extraordinary difference. So those of you who are out there for long periods of time, who need endurance, who want to maintain your energy level, this is one of the most amazing products you will ever try. But then comes recovery. You went out and did it. You worked hard. You had a tough workout. You did a long ride, a long hike, whatever it was. Now you've got to recover from that. And when you recover, what you've got to do is replace the glycogen stores in your muscle tissue so you're ready to go the next time. And if you do that efficiently, you also won't have the pain and stiffness that's normally associated with tough exercise. There's an old saying, no pain, no gain. Well, what if you could have the gain without the pain just because you did something right nutritionally? Well, the studies that were done with Shaklee from Dr. Ivy at the University of Texas, what they found was the actual recovery and replacement of lean muscle mass was dramatically higher with physique, both 2 hours and 4 hours after exercise, than it was with just carbohydrates by themselves or with just a protein supplement by itself. The results with physique were so much better that you actually can replace your energy stores and replace lean muscle mass faster than any other combination that they have ever found. So for recovery after exercise, this is an extraordinary product. And by the way, the Shaklee 180 smoothie, the science behind that includes lysine, which is what replaces that lean muscle mass. This is probably 90 to 95% as effective as the Physique. Physique is banana flavored, so if you don't happen to like banana, guess what? You can use the 180 smoothie. You got chocolate, you got vanilla, you got cafe latte, you got strawberry. You've got all kinds of choices, and it will do almost exactly what Physique does. So, one other thing to think about. How many people do you know are out there using energy drinks, whether they're athletes or not? They're doing these 2 and 3 and 5 times a day just to get through the day, and the vast majority of these things contain lots of artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, preservatives. They're high in sugar and high in calorie, not to mention the inconvenience of having to carry around a bottle or a can or whatever it is. There's a phenomenal alternative to that. We call it Shaklee Energy Chews. And I want you to look at the comparison in terms of the actual amount of caffeine, which is where that energy comes from, the calories, the sugar, artificial ingredients, et cetera, and you'll find there is nothing else out there even remotely like the Energy Chew. I've showed you 4 of the top-selling ones right here, and what you're going to see is that they have an amazing number of calories in them, an amazing amount of sugar in it compared to Shaklee, typically lots of artificial ingredients with the exception of Red Bull, and the actual cost, and the cost per milligram of caffeine, Shaklee is more than competitive without all the junk in it, and it is very convenient and easy to carry because it's just this little chew you can stuff in a pocket, and you don't have to have cans and bottles and all that stuff that typically you're going to end up throwing in a landfill anyway. So you've got some great alternatives. And ultimately, if you tend to overdo it, if you're one of those weekend warriors that doesn't quite figure out what your limits are yet, or if you're like me and you're one of the elder statesmen of the baby boomers, and if we were honest, we'd be calling ourselves the geezer boomers, if you end up maybe going a little bit too hard, you stress a muscle, whatever it is, we got joint and muscle pain cream. It is immediate relief. And when I say immediate, I mean within seconds you can feel it and see a change and a difference. Anybody who has chronic pain, because of past injuries, overexercise, we have pain relief complex that can make a huge difference after you've used it for a few days. And then especially those of you who are getting to the place where I am, where osteoarthritis can become an issue, where you get stiff joints, you have joint pain. Joint Health Complex is an extraordinary product. I absolutely could not live without this stuff. And it's available for anybody with painful, stiff, or creaky joints. Well, let's put the whole thing together for you, because it's an amazing package that'll help you build a good foundation, give you the endurance you want while you're exercising, help you recover quickly when you're through exercising, and help you overcome the over-exercise syndrome that so many of us might have. So every day, no matter what you're doing, I would encourage you to incorporate the Shaklee Vitalizer and one of our proteins into your daily diet. Add OsteoMatrix and VitalMag, especially if you have any muscle cramping or that kind of issue. And men, guess what? You just need to pay attention to the zinc because you just sweat a lot of this stuff out. Before exercise, we've got a wonderful product called Core Energy or Energy Chews. During exercise, you can use the Shaklee Performance for endurance and the Energy Chews to increase your focus. In fact, it's interesting, our granddaughters, when they were playing competitive volleyball, used both Shaklee Performance and Energy Chews during tournaments. And the other fun thing about the Energy Chews is it gives you such great focus that they also use it when they're studying for exams and just need to be a little sharper mentally. After exercise, make sure you recover appropriately with Physique or with the Shaklee 180 smoothies and the appropriate pain relief if you have overdone it. Any and all of those things can enhance whatever you're doing fitness-wise, athletically, and make a huge difference. So I hope you'll join us. I hope you'll try these things. And the thing that I get so excited about with athletes is you're typically in tune with your body. When you do something right, you don't have to wait around a month or two to know. You typically will know the next day whether or not it made a difference. So thanks for joining me. Try these products. I think you're going to be thrilled with the results that you